All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today on planning now for successful year-end fundraising. Thank you for joining us. We are happy to be working with you as your partner in international fundraising, and we are pleased to offer these webinars as a way to further help bolster your success in your international fundraising efforts. So today we'll cover year-end fundraising. I'll be speaking about it from the US, but much of what I say about how things function in the US could also be applicable to Canada. So if you're one of our members of our Canada Foundation, much of this will transfer over, and you can always check with Legia, your executive director for the foundation there, if there's anything you have a question on. As we go through today, you'll notice that most of my slides I've tried to make more visually interesting. They're not text heavy. But please know that the webinar is being recorded, and you will also receive a workbook with all the notes from what I covered today. So you don't have to worry about trying to furiously write things down as I'm saying it. I've got it all organized in a nice little guidebook that you'll receive along with a link to the recording sometime after our session concludes today. For those of you who don't know me, I am Heather Hill. I'm the head of foundations and the executive director for the US Foundation for Chaplain York. And with me, I also have Lisa Crittal, who I will let her introduce herself.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for that, Heather. I'm Lisa Crittal, and I'm the support manager for US charities, nonprofits in the US. I set up and manage them, and I've been doing so for the past 13 years. So I know there's a couple of my management clients out there. So hello to you all. And if I haven't met you, hello.
Great, thank you, Lisa. And with that, we'll start our session. We've got about 45 minutes to cover this today, and I hope that will include ample time for your questions. We will do our best to answer, and if we don't know an answer, we'll find out for you. But year-end fundraising, I can say, for over 20 years in the fundraising sector here in the US and internationally, I've seen just about everything for year-end fundraising, so I'm sure it would be hard to stump me at this point. All right, well, with that, I shall share my screen and away we will go. So our objectives today, really want to help you understand the year-end timeline and what that really means. Year-end can be interpreted a lot of different ways. So we'll talk about that just a little bit as we get started to make sure we're working out of the same context. We're going to talk about some informed strategies and how you approach different donor segments and why that's important. And we'll also talk about some cultural awareness things. So some weird nuances and just accepted norms in the US and often in Canada as well that might be a bit different from what would be appropriate or acceptable where you are fundraising in your home country. So first, I would suggest you rethink your definition of year-end. So I think traditionally people have thought about year-end as being December, basically the last month of the calendar year, thinking around holiday time. But the reality is year-end fundraising in the US starts in October. Generally mid to late October is when you'll see this kick in. And that's because it's really important to get ahead of the holiday season, which seems to be starting earlier and earlier each year. But you see increased mail volume around the holidays, and you also see a lot of people taking time off for travel or other functions as the year end approaches. So Thanksgiving is celebrated the last Thursday of November in the US. And once that week rolls around, so even the few days leading up to Thanksgiving, schedules are just quite busy with travel, with seasonal activities, and often for businesses as well. It's a busy time because it's coming up to the end of the financial year or tax. And if it's not the financial year, it's the end of the tax year for many companies. So it can be a very busy time for people. So it's important to start early to get ahead of all that rush that happens at the end of the year. So my tip for you is that you start your year-end fundraising in the second half of November. So anytime that third or fourth week in November would be the ideal time to start your year-end fundraising. what does that year-end fundraising look like? Well, you have different donors and you really need to tailor your donor strategies to those different segments. So you see on the screen a few different channels in which we're doing our fundraising. So you see just regular hard copy mail, email, having Zoom calls, and having personal meetings, which may or may not be feasible depending on what your travel budget is like and also what COVID permits. But we'll start talking about your annual donors or your supporter level donors. I don't like to call them lower level donors because low level, compared to a major donor might mean one thing for us as fundraisers, but for that donor who gave, that might be a really big gift for them. You never know what people are giving from. So I prefer to call them annual donors, so the ones who just generally will give to you at the end of the year, and as well as your kind of supporter level donors. So kind of that core group that's supporting you, maybe with gifts anywhere from $10 up to $1,000, but somewhere in that range. And what I would suggest for those donors is that you use a series of fundraising communications starting in mid to late October and plan to send at least 2 follow-up pieces. If nothing else, if you're a little bit limited, if you're pressed for time, perhaps you could just do 1 initial mailing and 1 follow-up. But if you can do 2 follow-ups, that's great. I would suggest 1 in mid to late October, 1 right before Thanksgiving. So if you could get it in that 2nd to 3rd week of November, and then 1 in the first week of December. So really you're looking at kind of 2-week intervals in between those communications. That gives people a time to see them and jog their memory. If they receive the first one, what happens at the year-end time is people get busy. They might set things aside and think, oh, I'll come back to that later. They flag something on the inbox to come back to, but life just happened. It's a very human thing. And those reminders are helpful for people to go back and take the action that maybe they thought of doing before, but got distracted from by other things. So you see, it's a very, those last 3 months of the calendar year are very busy. There's a lot of activity. There's also an increase in fundraising across the board. So people are getting appeals from multiple organizations, and you want yours to stand out. So that means making sure they see it a few times in the hopes that they actually do look at it and read it and respond to it. So these multiple points of contact are very important. And I would also just suggest, if you're doing a series, and I hope that you do, that there's a theme or a common thread that's tying all those pieces together. So if you're telling a story about someone who the donors really helped, someone that your mission impacted, to tell that story, to tie back to that story in the subsequent pieces, thanks to you, Susie was able to XYZ. And then, in the following piece, remember Susie, she's so grateful for the help that you provided. And she really hopes that you'll be able to help more people like her. Again, just making sure that it's a consistent theme, or, if you're telling it about a certain area of your work, it's best if you could include a story, if you can. People connect with people. People want to have that emotional connection, not just the logical one. You can give them all the reasons, educating them about the impact your mission does with statistics and numbers, but there's a wealth of research out there that shows stories will generate stronger results and response in your fundraising than statistics will. It's not that statistics aren't important, but save those for more reporting back to your donors when you're thanking them. Use the stories when you're doing your fundraising appeals. So if you can have a nice story that you can call back to across your year-end fundraising pieces, that's really ideal, to keep that connection, to keep that personal feeling, and to make sure that your messages come through as connected and cohesive. You're not sending 2 or 3 separate messages, but it's all one connected effort to engage them. If you're interested in doing print mail in the US and you need a referral for a good print shop, I'm happy to help with that. Please do reach out to me anytime. There's a group that I've referred a few of our foundation fund holders to. they're used to working with international organizations to do print pieces in the US. So if that's something you're interested in, happy to help. But email is perfectly fine. And I think especially what we're seeing, large part due to the pandemic, digital is quite accepted. It's not seen as impersonal or hands-off or distant. It's the primary means of communication in many ways now. So don't feel shy about sending emails. I would also encourage you to make sure that whatever story that you're telling in your fundraising appeals, your donors are seeing mirrored in your social media and as well on your website, to make sure they're having that connected experience through whatever channel they're connecting to you on. Then as we talk about major donors, I strongly suggest that you start speaking with them about their gift as well in mid to late October. It's not that you're necessarily sending them, a series of pieces. It's a little bit different with major donors. You want to be having those more personal connections and conversations in a one-on-one way. But you do want to start early with them as well, and I'll explain why. But before I do, I just want to also emphasize, be sure you've been stewarding those major donors and cultivating them prior to the year-end time. You don't want the first time they hear from you after they've made their last gift when you're asking them for the next. Be sure that you've thanked them. Be sure that you've reported back to them on the great things that their gift helped accomplish for your mission. And be talking to them about the difference that they can make before you're talking to them about their next gift. So why start early with major donors? Well, while tax benefits aren't the driver of giving, they are a consideration, especially for major donors, for the timing or the type of gift that they make for you. So they might be thinking about their tax obligations, and base their giving amounts on what that is. So as the tax year is coming to a close at the end of December, they might be working with their financial advisor, thinking about what their tax obligations are going to be at the end of the year and thinking about how they can offset that through their charitable giving. And if they have appreciated assets, so stocks or shares or other assets, they might be watching the financial markets, especially in those last 2 months of the year, and wanting to time their gift based on how those markets are performing. So really, that's why you want to talk to them early, so that as they're making those plans, as they're thinking about when and how they're giving, that you are top of mind as the charity that they want to benefit from this charitable gift that they're making. To make sure that you're stewarding that relationship well, that you've got the communication there, so that when the timing is right for them, they're thinking of you and are able to know exactly how they can best support you through that charitable gift. And you want to listen to your major donors and understand what factors might be important to them. So are there tax obligations that they're considering? But are there other things that are on their mind as well? Specific areas of interest in your organization? Are they aware of the different initiatives that you have going on, what your needs are, how you may have been affected by the pandemic and are still kind of recovering from those effects? Or especially now, as we're seeing some of the economic shifts around the world, making sure they're aware of, what challenges you might be facing and how they can help. But also listening to what's important to your major donors as far as what their needs are, what their interests are, what might be influencing their decisions about gifts. Do they have loved ones that they're caring for? Do they have children who are in school? Do they have parents they might be taking care of? There are just many factors that we don't know as fundraisers until we have that conversation with our donors. So be sure that you're having those conversations with your major donors early, so that you can best engage them in a way that's meaningful for them and can benefit those that your mission serves. And always be sure that your ask to your donors is meaningful for them. Again, it might be a consideration around timing, but the reason that they're supporting you is their personal connection to your mission. Timing and tax benefits are a consideration, they are not the driver. So do keep that in mind. They're giving because they care about you and the work that you're doing and your mission and their connection to it. So be sure that you're engaging with them and really listening to what that connection is and honoring that and how you approach them. So my tip for you is to learn who your donors are, why they give to you, and what their giving preferences are. So understanding the means through which they might give, whether that's a major donor who's giving through assets, or whether that's just an annual or supporter donor who's giving to you, out of their regular budget, and really thinking about who they are, where they're located, and what their connection is to you, so that when you are asking them for their gift, you're doing it in a way that is meaningful for them and demonstrate to them that you have been listening and that you care about what's important to them. So then a little bit about cultural awareness. So there are some nuances in the US, again, things that might be acceptable or appropriate here that would be a bit off-putting or seen as aggressive in other places. So starting off, multiple asks are normal and they're expected. So we talked earlier about, starting early and sending follow-up messages. That's the standard. It's not going to be seen as unusual or out of place if you're sending multiple messages, whatever channels that you're using. And if you're using multiple channels, again, that's not unusual. It's not going to be off-putting. And in many cases, it's appreciated because, as I said, during this busy time of year, people get distracted. Best intentions may have been to respond to you when they got their first communication from you, but something came up in the middle of that and they just didn't get around to it. So those follow-ups are important. And again, many people appreciate the reminders. So, and it's also, again, as we said earlier, it's a time where many charities are doing their fundraising. So donors are getting multiple appeals from multiple organizations. And on average, 37% of donations are received in the last 3 months of the calendar year here in the US. So it's a huge percentage of the annual fundraising revenue that's generated just in those last 3 months. So as you see, it's a crowded space and you want to make sure that you're standing out and that the people who care about you can easily find your call to action and respond to it. So my tip for you is to use a multi-channel approach. So use email, use social media, use text, web, and print if you have access to all those, to ensure that your communication is seen and it's remembered. Another thing that I would point out is that it's okay to ask for a larger gift at year end. So oftentimes throughout the year, as we're doing our fundraising ask amounts are often based on last gift amount. So you might be using a formula like that pulls in the last gift and maybe has a couple multipliers of that last gift if you're using an ask string. But for year end, you might want to consider basing your ask on the largest gift amount. Obviously, if it's an outlier gift, do take that into consideration. You might want to put some limiters on your formula to keep those outliers out. But maybe look at using the largest gift amount and a higher multiplier for your ask string options. So, sorry, those are two separate things. Base your ask string on the largest gift amount, or if you want to use the most recent gift, consider using a higher multiplier as you're providing the other gift options in the ask string. So what do I mean by a multiplier? So maybe your options are last gift times 1.5 and last gift times 2. So maybe for year end, it's last gift times 2, last gift times 3. Just some things to do. And the other thing I would say is at year end, you can generally reach out to a larger donor base than you would typically do. So you can reach out to maybe those deep lapse donors that haven't connected with you for a while, or maybe do some prospecting and try to do some donor acquisition. because you have a higher volume, it provides an opportunity for you to do some A/B testing. So maybe taking a section of your fundraising appeals and testing using the largest gift as what you base your ask string on, or testing using a higher multiplier on your ask string. It's a great time of year to do a little bit of A/B testing on that. And if you don't want to use the largest gift or use a larger multiplier, you could just ask for an additional amount. Again, these are all normal things for year-end fundraising in the US. So what I mean by asking for an additional gift, maybe you've got your ask, you've got your amounts that you're presenting as options, and then you just put a little tick box underneath. Would you consider an extra $20, $25, or even $5 if you just want just a little bit extra? But would you consider an extra blank amount so that, and have a little connection to your mission there? But just that right there as they're on the response device, whether that's in an email on the website or in a print piece, just that extra little tick box option for them to make an additional, add an additional amount to what their standard gift might be. So these are some practices that are completely acceptable. And I would actually encourage you, if you don't do it across your whole donor audience, to at least do a little bit of testing on it and see what kind of results you get. Compare your test group to a control and see if it's something you might want to implement going forward. I would also note that Giving Tuesday has grown quite a bit over the years, and you should integrate Giving Tuesday into your year-end strategy. But don't base your year-end strategy on Giving Tuesday. It's a very fine line there. Include it, but don't make that your only year-end strategy. So Giving Tuesday participation has grown tremendously since it was first conceived in 2012. And it's grown in both the number of donors supporting efforts on Giving Tuesday, but it's also grown in the number of charities who participate. So that means if Giving Tuesday is your only year-end appeal, it's going to be one of many messages that donors are receiving on that day. So again, it's harder to be seen, it's harder to stand out because it's such a crowded day at this stage with the growth, which is a good thing, but it also makes it a bit challenging. So tie Giving Tuesday, tie that message into your year-end series and make your presence on Giving Tuesday part of your year-end series. On Giving Tuesday, tell a compelling story that helps donors see how they can have an impact. So Giving Tuesday might nudge the timing of a gift. Again, maybe it's a follow-up to an earlier appeal that you've already sent. So it might be a nice reminder for them. And on Giving Tuesday, where they're seeing giving messages everywhere, it might be like, oh, right, I meant to give to, this group, and today's a perfect day for it. It might nudge the timing. But again, just as tax benefits aren't the driver of giving, Giving Tuesday is not the driver of giving. That's not the reason that donors support you. They support you because of your mission, the good work that you're doing and their connection to it. So be sure that you're keeping your mission at the heart of what you do. So my tip for Giving Tuesday is to have a presence so that donors know, donors who know you and the donors who love you have an opportunity to support you on that day. But don't make Giving Tuesday your only contact with them at year end. I would also say that seasonal messages are appropriate. That's a question that comes up quite a bit. People wanting to know, is it okay to talk about the holidays? Is it okay to reference the seasonality of year end? That is okay. If you are a faith-based organization, it's fine for you to mention any kind of holidays that tie into your faith practice. It's okay to just acknowledge that this is a time when many of us are busy with the holidays, but it's also a time when many of us struggle who don't have the same resources. Think of ways that some of that seasonality might tie into your message. The other thing I would say as well, and this is especially true, I found for universities, colleges, if there's a year-end tradition that maybe has been practiced by your organization. So for school, sometimes it's everyone would gather around the quad or main hall, and we would sing carols, or we would decorate, or we would do the send-off for winter break, or whatever that might be. Touch on that nostalgia that people might have for those traditions that your organization had around the holiday time or around the season. But it's fine to bring those messages in. But again, just be sensitive that not every donor you have is going to be celebrating the holidays that you might celebrate. So unless you are a faith-based, I would be careful about how much emphasis you put on the religious aspect of holidays. But I do think it's fine and appropriate to acknowledge the holidays and how that has a different impact on people depending on where they might be, and especially if it ties into your organization's mission. And also consider a special digital campaign the last 3 days of the calendar year. So we've been up to this point talking about what you might be doing over the last 3 months of the year, but the last 3 days of the calendar year account for 10% of fundraising revenue. So that 37% I mentioned that comes in those last 3 months of the year, 10% of it, or 10% of that 37%, so a third of it comes in the last 3 days of the calendar year. So December 29th, 30th, and 31st are very high activity. Again, for those who do want to get that gift in because they are interested in the tax benefits, those are the days that they might be waiting to the last minute, especially if they're giving from assets, or they're still trying to do all the calculations for their what their tax obligations might be, and finally get that number right at the last minute. You want to be sure that they're receiving opportunities to give from you those last 3 days. So not only would I suggest a campaign over those last 3 days, but I would also say you can send them multiple messages on the last day, on December 31st itself. That's incredibly common, very acceptable. I would say no more than 3. I've seen some organizations do 5 or more. That I think is a bit excessive, but one early in the day, one maybe in the afternoon, and then one in the evening, just to have those 3 touch points across the day to really give your donors an opportunity to give on those days, and to make sure that you're seen. As I said, it's because it's common and acceptable. Many organizations do it. So again, having a few touch points during the day will ensure that your message is seen amongst the other messages that might be coming in. And if you're interested in more information about those last 3 days and how you might develop a campaign around it and what that entails, just contact me after the webinar. So Legia and I did a webinar on this in December of last year. And we have a whole workbook we can share. I'm happy to send you the recording as well, that we really dive deep into what those last 3 days might look like. But I see Alex has a question. So Alex, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. And thanks. It's really interesting. I just wanted to ask your opinion on something that was a piece of advice we were given that suggested, and I'm talking about significantly major donors here, that most major donors way before the end of the year have already decided their giving. And the advice we were given was anything that you are given in the last 6 months of the year that you didn't already start, like if you're working with new donors, likely is to be what they termed loose change, and that the real gifts are planned well in advance. And I'm just wondering your thoughts on that. And the person was saying that actually those end of year stuff is good, best for maybe major donors, but not significant, not like the ultra high net worth.
Well, I would actually say it depends. I think when you get into the transformational donors, the ultra high net worth, they have a they're very distinct in the range of motivations for their gifts and how they give. And I think it's really a case by case basis. But I would say, especially with the economy the way it is right now, I think those who may not normally think about that as part of their timing, especially the ultra high net worth, are keeping a closer eye on it now. Because if they are giving from assets, and most of the high net worth donors are, they're not going to want to do that at a time when the markets are down.
Sure, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it is important to, I always emphasize with major donors to be having conversations with them regularly throughout the year for that very reason. You know, timing can vary quite a bit with them, but especially as you're coming up to that last 6 months. If they are concerned about markets, if they are concerned about any gains, capital gains that they've had over the course of the year, it might be loose change, but they might have been planning for this for a while and are just looking at the timing, the best timing. So
Great.
yeah, that's a great question. And then the last thing I will say is that thanking your year-end donors in a timely and personal way for their year-end gifts is very important. So as you're planning your strategy for your appeals, at the same time, plan your strategy for follow-up. Maybe even have your thank you messages, the general framing of it written ahead of time so that you can, as you're thanking, you can just add in, you know, any little bit of personalization as you go along, but you've got the main template done. Which will help you to be able to thank your donors promptly and personally as the gifts come in, so that they're not waiting, you know, weeks to hear from you. Again, many places close for the holiday season, so you might not be in the office until January. And if that's the case, you certainly, it's all the more reason to have those thank yous ready to go as soon as you come back into the office. Generally in the US, there's an expectation of some kind of acknowledgement in 24 to 48 hours. It's kind of the gold standard. It's not always possible. That's especially not always possible at year end. But to try to at least do it promptly, I would say within 2 weeks, if you can, is great. People will be a little bit more understanding for those calendar year end gifts, knowing that there might be closures and other things, but I would say as quickly as you can is important. So again, thinking about how often you should ask, how much you should ask for, thinking about Giving Tuesday, what was different about year-end messaging, and what else is different about year-end timing. We've covered our Giving Tuesday tip. Thanking your donors, again, just make sure that's part of that year-end plan. And then my final tip for you is to just be sure that you've thanked your donors. Speaking of thank yous, that you've thanked your donors and that you've shared how they've made a difference with their support before you start your year-end fundraising. I mentioned that with your major donors, that you should be talking with them throughout the year and not just when you're getting ready to approach them for a large gift again. But that goes for all your donors. The number one reason, there's been multiple research studies and they've been replicated over the last 10 years. The number one reason donors don't make another gift is that they feel they weren't properly thanked for their first gift. And by properly thanked, it's personally and promptly. So again, just all the more reason that you're including your thank yous for the year-end gifts as part of your year-end appeal strategy. But just making sure that you're having those touch points with your donors, that you're stewarding them well, that they know exactly what their gift helped to do for your charity, that they're feeling good, that they made a difference. So because that, as I said, that's why donors want to give. It's not the tax benefits, it's not the timing. Those are factors, but their interest in you has to do with your mission and the good work that you do and how they feel about it personally. So do be sure that you are thanking your donors well, not just at year end, but throughout the year. So I would, before I open up for questions, I just wanted to hand it off to Lisa as well to see if she had some thoughts or helpful suggestions for you that she would add as well. Because she's been around the year end giving block a few times as well.
That's lovely. Thanks so much, Heather. Most useful. I really appreciate it. Just wanted to really touch base a little bit about mainly for non-profits that are already individual non-profits that have their own 501c3 in the US. It's mainly to talk about GuideStar. GuideStar, for those of you that are not familiar, it's an information service which reports on non-profit organisations. So it's really used mainly by US donors to research and sort of check out the non-profits in the US. It also connects donors and grant makers to the non-profits by the means of location, where you're based, where you may be fundraising, also your interested areas such as education, human rights, health, etc. Now, this is all based on information about your non-profit, your 501c3 organisation, and this information is shared from the IRS to GuideStar when the non-profit is initially set up, and then annually the IRS will share the tax returns that get uploaded onto GuideStar without the list of contributors, thank goodness. But this is sometimes the very basic information on your non-profit, and it will just detail your tax returns, your mission statement, and it's really then down to you, as you say. The IRS are delays at the moment, so it could take a while for this information to be uploaded. What you're able to do with your own 501c3 nonprofit is you can do what they claim your profile. This is where you log on to GuideStar, enter your organisation's details, such as the name or the EIN number, and you claim the profile as yours. This then enables you to update the contact information, the list of your directors and officers, and more importantly, add additional information, such as listing your current programs that your nonprofit is running or supporting, and perhaps even the location of where your programs are currently being run. The other thing with GuideStar, recently they offer a donation section. So this would actually allow the donor, while they're there in GuideStar, to give directly to you. Now, they do partner with many organisations, common ones, Network for Good, PayPal, Salesforce, even Amazon Smile, enabling you to process your donation straight there and also have a donate button. So it takes you straight in there. The other thing that I wanted to just touch on is an offer that they're running at the moment through GuideStar. When you claim your profile and you update certain information, you go up a level, if you like, in what they call their seal of transparency. So for organisations that have less than $1 million in total revenue, currently what they're offering is, by updating your profile, by uploading all this information, you can earn what they call a gold of a seal transparency. And this enables you to a free year of actually using the access to a foundation directory essential. That is through what they call their Go for Gold promotion. All right, so that's something, if you have your own 501c3 organization already, it's something that we really do suggest that you look to. If you haven't already claimed your profile, claim it now. If you have claimed it, update it now. It's very simple. It's free to you, free to upload as much information as you like, as you say, and it's automatically updated from the IRS. Your course can be still checked out through the IRS website to make sure your organization is compliant and filing your tax returns. It's just one area that you may want to update on. And something we just touched on earlier was the Thanksgiving season. So with Giving Tuesday, of course, we have the sales, the Black Friday, when everybody will jump on and start their potential Christmas shopping. Personally, I tend to wait a while, but there's a lot of people out there that will jump on Amazon. There's Amazon Smile, which as a non-profit you can join. And what it enables you to do, set it up as your charity, And your charity, when it's nominated by somebody who's spending a lot on Amazon, instead of logging on to their usual Amazon account, they would log on to Amazon Smile. They would make their purchases, and it's 0.5% of all the eligible purchases will be donated to your organisation by means of selecting you from a list. So you would join there through Amazon Smile, set up your charity account, notify your donors. So just ahead of their shopping spree, they can find you on there and perhaps make some donations to your organisation. Okay, so that's just I wanted to touch really for our 501c3 clients. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Yes, and again, just to clarify, that is for 501c3 clients. So if you're a fund holder with a foundation, you won't have a GuideStar profile, nor can you set up an Amazon Smile account. But if you are a 501c3 client, I would echo what Lisa said and highly encourage you to do both. And again, getting, especially with GuideStar, but with Amazon as well, getting that set up before year-end time comes around so that it's all in place and ready to go. And one other tip I'd add, just across the board for 501c3 clients as well as foundation fund holders, please, please, please be sure, if you haven't done it for a while, your website's up to date. Add some new content. As I said, if you can tie into your messaging that you'll be sending at year end, that's all the better. At least on your landing page for donations, have that sync up with your year end appeal. And again, think about your social media presence. Just to have a profile is not enough. You need to be, refreshing content and engaging your audience through that. So try to get both of those in place and in a healthy state before year end time comes around, so that they can be, additional helps for you and aren't distractions from the other fundraising that you're doing. With that, any other questions, ideas that you've tried that you'd like to share, or anything else? Lisa and I are happy to be resources for you. Oh, I see one in chat. What advice do you have about applying year-end principles to corporate donors, both for giving and acquisition? That's a great question. Very, very similar to what I would say with the timing is to start early. Again, I think corporations might have different financial years depending on how they're set up, but I do think that makes it all the more important to start having those conversations early in the year. And again, I think again, as they're looking at markets and holdings and other things, they will make year-end gifts, and some of them, I would say in the US, also have a budget for that type of giving. So it's good. I think the best advice I could give you is to really look at, if you can get into the website of that corporation and look at their staff registry or listing, and find out who's responsible for community engagement or social responsibility, or something that's essentially coding for charitable giving. And trying to reach out to that person directly, just blindly going in and using the general info line or email address. It's going to, if it gets to anywhere it's supposed to go, it's going to get there the very long way around and take up valuable time. But I think if you can do a little bit of sleuthing on the website and find out who is that person who's seems to be responsible or the gatekeeper for their charitable giving, to have that conversation early. And I would even say before October, right now is actually probably a very good time as you're going into the second half of the calendar year, especially if they've got variable timing. So yeah, great to have that conversation now. And I would say that applies both for your returning corporate donors as well as your and any kind of acquisition. So if it's corporate donor you already know, you should be familiar with what their financial year timing is and what their cycles look like. But definitely that fourth quarter of the calendar year is a good time for them to be giving. So, and if you know them well, I don't think it hurts now to start having the conversation. And certainly with acquisition, if you're making that approach for the first time, this is a new relationship that you're trying to develop. The earlier you can start, the better. Corporations, depending on their size, are known to move a bit slow. So all the more reason to start a bit early to just kind of allow for that longer tail on the giving cycle there. Any other questions? All right. Well, if you do have additional questions, things that come to you afterwards, or as I said, if you want more information on how to do a print mailing in the US, or if you'd like more information about a specific strategy for the last 3 days of the year, do reach out. We're happy to help you with that. So I've got the contact information for Lisa, for myself, and for Ligia if you're in Canada. We are here to help you. We are here as resources for you. We are here to support your international fundraising efforts, and we want you to be successful. So anything we can do to help you, please do let us know. We're happy to have conversations and connect you with the tools that you need to have a strong year-end fundraising season, as well as to be successful throughout the year. So with that, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. And I also want to thank you for your partnership with Chapel in York. We are grateful to be working with all of you and really value our connection with you. So again, we're here to serve you. Anything we can do to be helpful, please do let us know. We are happy to be a resource. Thank you so much. For those of you in the UK and the EU, I hope you are keeping cool and finding shady places to unwind. We'll say I'm in a part of the US right now where we're looking at about 41 degrees Celsius today. So I do empathize, especially where I am, because high temperatures are the normal. There's air conditioning, and I'm well aware that is not the norm in the UK and EU. So my heart goes out to you, because it's not comfortable here with the air conditioning, and I can't imagine without it. So hang in there, everyone.
Cooler today, thank goodness. That's lovely. Thanks ever so much. Take care, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.